Hello, and welcome to the Powder Room, where we discover the message within our messes. I am your host, Ivy Ashley. In today's episode titled, I Am Not My Uterus, we're picking up right where we left off in the last episode. So if you have not listened to part one, please stop this recording, go back and listen, and we will be here when you return. Now, before I get started today, I must say, I know I was very vulnerable and candid last week. And I must admit, reliving my experience was a lot for me too. As I was sharing and actually listening to my words, I was in awe that I was talking about myself. And I know that sounds so crazy, but it's amazing what happens when you take time to actually ponder the things that you've gone through. And all I could do after last week's episode is just thank God and praise Him because I made it to the other side. Oh my God, because I remember the many, many, many times that I was just so lost and didn't have any hope. But knowing what I know now and being where I am now, I know without a shadow of a doubt that God is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that I can ever ask or think according to the power that is at work in me. So I am so, 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 so grateful. And I'm going to stop right there and get into what I'm talking about today before I reveal too much because I was about to go, go, go. So let me stop there and go ahead and give my disclaimer. The following discussion includes a personal experience related to reproductive health and the treatment options I chose. Please note that I am not a medical professional and nothing shared in this episode should be interpreted as medical advice. Every person's body and situation are different. If you're facing similar issues, I strongly encourage you to consult with a licensed healthcare provider to explore the options that are right for you. All right, let's get into part two of I Am Not My Uterus. So last week we left off, I was to the point where I was tired. It was 2018 and I was super tired, but I was still holding on to the hope of being a mom biologically. Part of me felt incomplete because I hadn't experienced motherhood. And I know that I could have taken things into my own hands, but it was never my desire to create life without being married first. Now, I don't judge anyone who became a mother under different circumstances, and I expect the same respect for my choice. And I think it's very important for me to say that. Do I regret not taking things into my own hands and just having a baby with whoever? That's a hard one. I would say the flesh part of me would say yes, but the spirit part of me would say absolutely not, because having a child, with the wrong person and having to deal with that at least 18 years, I think I'm good, y'all. For those of you who've had that experience, more power to you, but I think I'm good. Anyway, my mom passed in 2019. And after that, I began to question everything and wondering and saying to myself, maybe motherhood wasn't for me. It's nothing like mortality to kind of, bring you to a point where you start looking at life differently. And when you deal with loss, as far as the loss of a loved one, someone that was super, super important and close to you, then life shifts majorly. And if you haven't had that experience where you've lost a parent or someone that was like super, super close to you, you don't understand it until you've been dealt that card, I will say. So by 2022, I found myself being severely anemic again, always tired again, minimal social life again, bleeding heavy again, passing clots that look like mini embryos again, having painful periods again, and also being subjected to, the multiple iron infusions over and over again. I was over it. I was like completely over it. I still wanted my baby. I'm telling you, if you remember my best friend Katrina during the Mother's Day episode, she said that my giving up is not like everybody else's giving up. And I really didn't know what she meant when she said that. But as I'm telling my story, I completely understand what she means, because a year or two of what I've been through, some people would have given up. But 20 plus years, you talking about having tenacity. In this area, I definitely had tenacity because I wanted what I wanted. So the fibroids were back, and they were everywhere at this point. And there was one particular one about the size of, I want to say, a lemon, a large lemon. And it was sitting, actually, I think it was an orange. It was an orange sitting in the middle of my uterus. And it was making my life hell. Because of the fact of where it was positioned, the blood flow had to pass it when I was on my cycle. So that means, it was the most severe pain that I had experienced ever. And one thing about fibroids is they feed off of blood supply. And so I know that fibroid was having a field day during my cycles. So after talking to my physician, and shout out to Dr. Ruth Ann Heron Davis, who is absolutely amazing. After talking to her about my treatment options, I decided to do UFE, uterine fibroid embolization, because I was trying not to remove the fibroids again. And I absolutely did not want a hysterectomy because, of course, I still wanted to be a mom. So I decided to try this procedure. Plus, it was minimally invasive. It didn't require anesthesia. And what the procedure is, for those of you who don't know or haven't heard of it, they sedate you, actually pretty much numb you, and they give you something to sedate you a little bit, but you are awake during the entire procedure. They take a catheter and they put it in through your groin area to a blood vessel that leads them to the blood vessels that feed the blood to the fibroids. And they attempt to cut off the blood supply to the fibroids so that hopefully they will die because they're not getting the blood that they need to live. So I had that procedure, and as a result, only one disappeared. And I found out after, having that procedure that it only works depending on the location of your fibroids, and you don't really know how effective it will be until, you have the procedure. So my symptoms changed very little, and I continued to be in pain and suffering, every month. So last year in 2024, I was still holding out hope, still going through what I was going through. Nothing had changed until July of last year. I was in church listening to the message, and I wish I had my notes of the message I had taken that day. But I cannot find them, unfortunately. But it was something that my pastor said that hit me like a ton of bricks. And after he said whatever he said, I heard the Lord say as clear as day, you will not experience motherhood biologically. And I paused, and it's like everything around me went dark. And it's like when those words like resonated, I began to wail and weep like I have never cried in my entire life. And I think from that point in the service, I cried until service was done that day. I cried so intensely to somebody who was sitting on the opposite side of the church, and my church isn't that big, but she says she remembers the exact day that I'm talking about because the way that I was crying made such an impression on her. Y'all, I was so hurt that the one thing that I had always wanted was not going to happen to me. And the thing about God, I don't know how his relationship is with you. When he tells me something, 9.999 times out of 10, I don't get an explanation. And I did not get an explanation that day as to why I was not going to have a baby biologically. It was just something that I just had to sit with and deal with. So as a result, I called my doctor, or I emailed my doctor, and I said, I'm ready to put my uterus in the trash. Because that's the way I was feeling at the time. I was angry, but God has said what he said. So what I'm going to do, what I'm going to hold on to it for and keep being sick all the time. So my surgery was scheduled for September the 27th. And from the day that I had scheduled my surgery, I began to be tormented. And all these different things began to play in my mind. The enemy or the devil told me that I was going to die. I wasn't going to make it to surgery. If I did make it to surgery, I was going to die on the table. So when they gave me anesthesia, I was never going to wake up. I began to deal with depression. I, had excruciating pain, more intense pain. I was stressed. I mean, I was like all over the place. And then when I had my pre-op appointment from my doctor the week before the surgery, I told her, what was going on. And I began to cry in her office. And she told me that she could not operate on me in the state that I was in because if I was not mentally and emotionally prepared for surgery, it would impact my recovery. And so, and then she also asked me if I was in therapy. And she said, you need to go talk to somebody. So because I had compartmentalized everything, but I had not really dealt with, my feelings with this thing that God had told me or in what I knew that I needed to do for my health. So I ended up canceling the surgery and I started counseling. And after a few sessions, I began to really deal with, where I was, why I felt the way that I felt, and, dealing with some deeply rooted issues. And I got to a place where I was making peace with the decision of going ahead and having a hysterectomy. So I rescheduled the surgery for January the 12th. And I was still afraid, still seriously struggling with the decision. And, it was just a lot for me to be dealing with. And I really wasn't I was talking to some of my family and some of my friends, but I really wasn't giving them the totality totality of my feelings because I felt like the part of me that was created for me to give life was the same life I felt was being taken away from me. And so just dealing with that on an everyday basis was a lot on me mentally and emotionally because I never planned on having a life that didn't include me being a mom. I mean, I have wanted this since I had my adoption doll Andrea when I was 6 or 7 years old. I mean, I just knew that I was going to be a mother, biologically, that is. And so I began grieving my uterus. I began grieving my reproductive organs because I felt that my body had betrayed me. And so got through the holidays and I had a couple more sessions with her before I was scheduled for surgery. And so I specifically shared with her an experience that I had through the holidays when I was flying on American Airlines. And so to make a long story short, I had come on my cycle the day before my flight was scheduled to leave. And in my mind, I already knew that this was going to be tough. So I did the best I could to prepare myself for the trip. So I made sure that I was fresh and clean, not to be graphic, before I got on the plane. I had on pads the size of diapers, the ones that go from the front to the back, ladies. So you know what I'm talking about. So I had like on three of them. And midway through the flight, I said I knew I needed to go check. And from Charlotte to Houston is probably about maybe 3 hours or so. And so about an hour and a half into the flight, I got up and went to the restroom and it was already a disaster. Thank God I had on black pants. And so I had already soiled through my underwear, again, not to be too graphic. And so I changed myself, did as much as I could to be clean. But when I got back to my seat, I motioned for the flight attendant and I said, hey, I'm having a medical situation and I need to deboard the plane as soon as possible, as soon as we land. And she asked me, like, what was going on. And I told her, I'm bleeding very heavily. And this heifer had the nerve to ask me, do you have any pads? And I was like, yes. And I'm just like, Please don't talk to me like I'm 13 having a cycle for the first time and I don't know what to do for myself. If I'm telling you that I'm having a medical emergency, then trust and believe this is something that's beyond just changing a pad. And so I went back and forth with her, and she came, I guess, went and asked somebody or did whatever and came back and wasn't willing to work with me in my situation. And I just began to cry in my seat. And I was like, Lord, I am so tired of this. I am so freaking tired of this. And so when we landed, we were told that there was a lady on the plane who was having a medical emergency and needed to get off the plane as, immediately. I could not believe it. And then when I saw who was getting off the plane, it was an old white lady. And I was just so disgusted. And I felt like, my pain and my situation had been minimized. And this lady who looked like nothing was wrong with her, they had placed her on a pedestal and was able to accommodate her and not accommodate me. Now, I had a whole lot of thoughts of what I wanted to do, but I did not want to come across as the angry Black woman. And so by the time I got off the plane, I went straight to the bathroom. I texted my niece and my sister and told them to please stop by whatever store they could stop by and get me a pack of underwear. I mean, it was just so embarrassing. And by the time my niece came and picked me up, she got out of the car to help me with my bags. And it was like as soon as I saw her, I just broke down in tears. It was just, people don't understand how mentally and emotionally taxing dealing with gynecological issues is. You don't get it until it's you that's going through it or you've witnessed someone personally going through it. You don't get it. It seems trivial. It seems like we're complaining. It seems like it's not that bad. Trust me, it is that bad. And I couldn't believe that I had fell into my niece's chest and just cried. A 50-year-old woman, but I did not care. And all she said was, "It's okay, Auntie. It's okay. We're here now." And it was at that point I realized I did not want to live like that anymore. Dysmenorrhea was impacting my quality of life. And that's when I knew I had to press through the fear. I had to press through the grief and just do what I know that needed to get done. And so when I was sharing this information with my therapist and, telling her how I felt and the interaction with the flight attendant, she said, "Ivy, do you know?" She said, "I know you said that you didn't want to come across as the angry Black woman. But," she said, "do you realize that you have a right to be angry?" And when she said that, I felt so liberated. And I told her, I was like, "Heidi," I was like, "I am angry." And then I shouted because I wanted peace. And I shouted way louder than that. But it was like a revelation to myself that I had the right to be angry in that situation and in the hand that I had been dealt, that it was okay for me to feel that emotion and acknowledge it. And I just felt so freaking free to be able to just be that and not be judged in the moment. And it was like, after that therapy session was over, listen, I was so ready to have surgery. I was so ready to have surgery. And I just had this peace the night before. This peace came over me that I had never experienced before. I woke up the next morning, surgery day, excited and ready. I near about skipped, to the hospital once we got in the parking lot. And so I got into like the pre-op area, y'all. And my surgeon was late. She was a little later than what, I expected her to be. And when she came, she was like, traffic was crazy this morning. I was like, listen, I was about to say, did you forget you had surgery today? Let's go. I'm ready. I was so ready. And I can tell you that life post surgery is relief, it's freedom, and it's 100% healing. And during my recovery, I told my doctor, I said, you know what? I said, no pain that I experienced in recovery will or didn't even come close to any of the pain that I had felt over the past 20 plus years. So I said I would do recovery 10 times if that's what it's going to be. That's just how much, I felt so amazing. I felt so super amazing. And I thank God for just bringing me through that whole circumstance and situation. So now, the part of me that I thought, let me correct that, the part of me that I thought made me a woman is no longer here. I no longer have a uterus. I no longer have a cervix. I no longer have fallopian tubes. The only thing I have is still my ovaries, and to deal with like the hormones and to not be thrown into menopause early. So, because I don't have those female parts, I'm having to change my mindset of what I think a woman is. I'm having to let go of what society tells me that a woman is. Motherhood is no longer seen as essential to womanhood. Marriage is optional, but it shouldn't be expected because there are some women who don't want to be wives, and that's okay. So let's normalize not asking people, when are you getting married? Let's normalize not asking women when you're going to have a baby. Because, see, we don't understand the history that might be behind that answer. You don't know what people are going through and what triggers you may set off in asking people questions that you're not ready to receive answers for. So let's just leave that alone. I am learning. Over the years, I have learned that women are leaders, breadwinners, creatives, activists, a whole lot more. In my womanhood, it also includes the right to be soft, strong, and vulnerable at the same time, and I don't have to sacrifice one for the other. I can also be in control of my emotions and not tolerate being dismissed as weak. Okay? especially us as Black women, because just because I'm strong, it does not make me aggressive, but it does make me confident in who I am. Also, and I'm just talking about some things that I've had to consider in redefining what womanhood is. The sum total of who I am has nothing to do with my breast, my butt, or my vagina. Ooh, yes. Let me say that again. The sum total of who I am has nothing to do with my breast, my butt, or my vagina. And it is imperative that we as women demonstrate this in the way that we live and the way that we relate. Why is this important, Ivy? Because everyone born with a female has that. Everybody got breasts, everybody got butt, whether it's purchased or natural. But what is it about you that makes you different? And I submit to you is that's what makes you a woman, not anything superficial. That's some good stuff, y'all. That's some real good stuff. The last thing I want to touch on before I leave you today is why is there silence in our communities around reproductive health? Why are we not having more conversations about this topic? Why are certain things taboo and centered in shame? And that actually is one of the reasons for the silence, because many cultures view discussions on reproductive health, things like menstruation, contraception, infertility, abortion, menopause, they view all of that as taboo or private or inappropriate. And we need to take that stigma off. I can remember, y'all, growing up, and my vagina was referred to as ice cream and a pocketbook. Now, what in the whole hell did vagina have to do with ice cream and a pocketbook? I mean, that is absolutely ludicrous. Call it what it is. How about we start there? Calling our body parts the name it was given instead of, you know, giving it these play names, I guess, that, supposed to soften the blow. I don't know, but I'm sorry. I'm just so tickled because it just came to me like I still don't know where ice cream and pocketbook came from. As a matter of fact, if you were raised in a family and body parts were referred to something else than what the name is, please DM me. Please send me a post because I want to know. I'm very curious. But anyway, yeah, let's start the conversation there with teaching kids the right name for body parts. And a penis is not a PP, it is a penis. Okay. All right. I digress, I guess. So, another reason why there's silence in our communities around reproductive health is because of lack of education. And I don't understand it. We have to talk to one another. Definitely have to talk to the children, because the risk that we run in holding back education is we leave kids up to their own devices to try to learn things from their peers who also don't know anything themselves but think they know everything. So we have to start these conversations very early. And you may think your fifth grader is too young. Listen, these kids are having sex in third, fourth, and fifth grade. They're giving each other oral sex in elementary. They are not too young, and there is nothing that we can do to shield them from what the world is exposing them to. I mean, it's social media, it's the internet. They have access to all these things and all these tools. So your attempt to shelter them from it is going to backfire. So I think we'd rather arm them with the correct information than them being susceptible to what they learn in the streets or learn in the school. And that's what they have to make decisions by. We do not want to do that. And even older girls, young ladies in their late teens and early 20s, you think that they know certain things and they don't know anything about taking care of their bodies. And one of the things that really concerns me is I'm seeing all of these advertisements for like body deodorants and um perfume and sprays. Honey, if you have to use all of that in an attempt to cover up an odor, then guess what? There is something wrong, and a body spray and a deodorant is not going to address the core issue. Let's start there. Oh, Jesus. Okay. I'm just, I didn't expect to go this route, but it is so necessary, y'all. We have to have these discussions. We have to have these discussions. And, having pain and burning sensations when you're urinating, that is not normal. Various smells. If your vagina smells fishy, it is not normal. Come on, ladies. We have got to do better. And when we see these young ladies not conducting themselves as young ladies, we have to step in. We have to be compassionate enough to give them the guidance that they so long for. And I know, they can have this tough exterior and think that they know everything, but when you go to them in love, they will receive you, I believe. So come on, let's do what we need to do. The Bible tells us that the older women should teach the younger women. And I guess I'm in the category of the older woman now. It used to be my mom, but now it's me, it's us, y'all. Oh my goodness. And the last thing that has us being silent in our communities around reproductive health is fear, shame, and judgment. Sometimes we fear being judged or stigmatized for the choices that we've made or the experiences that we've had as it relates to our reproductive health. And this is especially true in communities where religion and social conservatism is strong. But I think you have to get to the point that you don't care what people think. And that is exactly where I am. The Bible tells me that there is therefore no condemnation to them that are in Christ Jesus. So if Jesus does not condemn me, I could care less about what anybody else thinks about Ivy. And that's just the point, or that's the place that you have to get to where you just don't care what people think. If what you have to share, if your experience can help somebody, that's what it's all about. The last thing I want to share. Ivy Ashley today is finding peace and purpose beyond reproduction. Took me a long time to get here, but I have arrived. I am learning to celebrate every win as well as the challenges I've walked through and made it out of. And this is a daily decision. It's a daily focus, figuring out and walking in what God has for me to do in this season and also in my life. If what I have said today has you in your feelings, has you contemplating, has you reconsidering, or at the very least, has you thinking, it has done exactly what I wanted it to do. And I'm so grateful that you have listened to my story as it relates to my medical journey with reproductive issues. Do me one favor. I know you know at least one woman who has or has had challenges in this area. Please share these 2 episodes with her. As a matter of fact, every woman that you know who's either struggled with medical issues, who struggle with reproductive health, who struggle with not being a mom and they're in their 40s and up, or even 35 and up, share these 2 episodes with them. Even young ladies who are just starting out can benefit from this episode. And I want to hear your stories, ladies, because I know you have a lot to share. So DM me on Instagram at thepowderroom.pod, or I have a group page on Facebook, the Powder Room Podcast. Please reach out to me. I want to hear your stories. I want to hear what you've learned. I want to hear what you've gathered from these episodes. I'm so excited to connect with you. You can also email me at consultiva@gmail.com. Please don't forget, join us next week where my topic will be uncovering daddy issues. And remember, you are always welcome in the powder room where we discover the message in our messes. Take care.